Hello.
Special edition, part two. We're going to wait a few minutes as everybody starts to log in. And if anyone is listening yet, we can't see you or hear you unless you say hi in the comments. So if you're brave and want to say hi in the comments, please do. And if you want to be a fly on the wall, that's okay too. So,
Okay.
hey, Chris. So Anya's on to share part two. Yay, Carolyn. Hey, good to see you again. And Chris Lynch from New Hampshire. Lots of Chris's. Okay, we got all C's in here. That's really cool. You guys need to go buy a lottery ticket. 3 C's. Good to see you too, Chris. All right, so Anya was on a few months ago sharing part one of her story. Hey, Jay. Part one of her story. So I'm going to let Anya do a kind of quick synopsis of part one of her story. And then we're going to go into why we are here for part two. And please don't be shy for anybody that's new to the live. Please ask a question, make comments, talk to each other, whatever you want to do. All right, Anya, you're on.
Okay. So part one, I shared a story I had when I was in Kauai in February of this past year. It was a water accident. It kind of took me back pretty far mentally, physically. And so coming out of that, I really wanted to do something that challenged me more mentally than physically. So I signed up for a marathon in
Okay, so I'm going to
Kauai.
interrupt for a second because this is like so underplaying. I kind of got in an accident in Kauai. When
Yeah.
Anya came home and I saw her, her whole back looked like somebody had whipped her 50 times. Bruised ribs, broken toes, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, go ahead, Anya. It was
Yeah.
like
So
I had a little boo boo in Kauai.
had a band-aid. No, so it was pretty bad. So anyways, I signed up for a marathon because that was something that I never thought that I could do. And it just so happened there was one this past September, so just literally about a month ago in Kauai, right where the accident happened. And so now we'll be sharing part two now that the marathon is behind us, thankfully.
Yay. I just love it when people reach their goals and write their chapters, right? That's what it's all about. So share the good, the bad, the ugly on running your first marathon.
I think so the good is looking back and knowing that I did it and I completed it and I did something that I set out to do. It's always nice to have that accomplishment and kind of always have that in your back pocket for when you're struggling. Knowing that you kind of have that accomplishment with me is really helpful. Um, the marathon itself, so I got new
Okay, so
shoes.
share the story of how you signed up and what you didn't do when you signed up.
Oh, I didn't look at the or the elevation profile before I signed up. And it turns out that Kauai is the fourth hardest marathon in the US because of all the
That's
hills.
my kid. For all of those that don't know, this is my daughter. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We just leap. Yeah.
And I've always been an endurance athlete. Like I was an endurance swimmer growing up. I loved long distances. But for some reason, when I'm running, hills just take so much out of me. So that was definitely the hardest part of the marathon was just getting through those hills, especially some of them were over a mile long, especially when you're hitting like mile 18, 19, 20. You really didn't start getting downhill until mile like 24. So for 24 miles, it was rolling. And then there were some that were just straight uphill for a mile, 2 miles at a time. Yeah, hills are a
You see
beast.
the comments?
So
Oh,
that was the toughest part of the marathon. What was really nice was I was nervous because of the heat and the humidity, but luckily it was overcast most of the day and we got a lot of rain, so it kind of kept it helpful. The only downside to that was our shoes got soaked, and so my shoes were like older, they weren't like new or anything, and so my insoles were really old and they were slipping in the water, and so my insoles were like slipping backwards, so I had to keep stopping to fix. But that was the only
That
downside
is
of the rain.
frustrating. I can say that you probably were overly patient with that activity, knowing you.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the breaks, especially when it was going uphill.
Yeah, there you go. There's the positive to that spin. So what happened when you hit the? So I know I like the part where you tell me, or told me, where you got to the split where you could go right and do a half marathon, or go straight or left and do the full marathon. What was your mindset at that point?
Yeah, tough. So there was a half marathon and there was a full marathon, and we started at the same time. So for the first 11 miles, everyone that signed up for the half and the full were running together. So that was really tough because, well, like one, there's over 2,000 people doing the race in total. And so most of them, about 90% of them, were doing the half. And so, of course, you're doing a half, you're going to be running faster than if you're running a full. So it's really hard trying to pace yourself with all these people around you that are kind of going past you. So it's really hard to just keep telling yourself, one, that they're doing the half. And so when you get to the split, they're almost done versus you're not even halfway done yet. So that was a challenging part. And then I also got a cramp in my hamstring 6, and I was like, oh no, like I still have 20 miles to go. And so I was approaching the split. So it was at a mile 11 where the half went left and the full went right. And I really truly considered just breaking off and doing the half. And I was like, it's fine. Like, you still did a half. Like, that's great. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. But then the other part of me was like, no, like you've come this far, you've trained this hard, you're not going to want to do this again. And it won't feel the same if you do another marathon in a different town. So you'd have to buy, which is just expensive. So all these things were like going on in my head, and I'm like battling, like, oh, it's fine, you're doing great, just go left. And then part of me is like, no, this is so expensive, go right. Like, you have to finish this. Um, so, and like Chris, my husband, was running with me, and I'm having this like with myself. Like, I'm not talking to him about any of this because I knew if I said it out loud, the chance of me going left was going to be greater, because I hold myself accountable better than anyone else can hold me accountable. So Chris would have given me left, whereas I, at the end of the day, didn't. Um, so ultimately, I went right. And that's the story. It was a
But
struggle.
yes, and I was so proud of you. And so, for those of you that don't know, I was very blessed and extremely grateful that Chris and Anya invited me to go with them. So I was there, and my win through waiting for Anya to come and Chris to finish the marathon, I walked 6 miles that day.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a lot to
Mhm.
walk 6 miles. Um, but the internal, what I find interesting, and everybody who coaches with me, we talk about those internal voices.
Mhm.
And the internal voices are so crucial in our success. And everybody, it doesn't matter if you're young, old, you know, a business owner, an executive, a manager, every once in a while we have those voices that don't serve us or let us off the hook. Like, it's okay, Tanya, to have ice cream tonight, when I'm working on my weight loss journey, right? Sometimes those voices aren't serving us, and it's really good to check them. So,
Mhm.
good job on checking your internal voices. And
Yeah.
yes, sometimes the people that we love are like, sure, Anya, it's okay. You did a half. You can turn. I mean, Chris loves you. He doesn't want you to go through pain, right?
Right.
I'm not
Or
saying,
yeah.
or he's also super competitive. So I'm not sure he would have let you off the hook so easy.
No, he wouldn't have let me off the hook easily, and then I would have been arguing, and you're running and you don't want to be arguing because you're already exhausted. So it's like,
Right.
it's just not going to say anything because it's just going to make me more tired and
Right.
more frustrated. And I'm just going to have a breakdown.
So some of the comments I'm reading, Anya, congratulations. Chris
Thank
Hennessy
you.
says that's the story, like no big deal. Yeah, running 26.2 miles in heat and humidity and sloshy shoes sounds dreadful to me. But you're here to talk
Yeah.
about it. Phil Green says, wow. I guess so. I can, sorry. Chris Hennessy is like, come on, Tanya, I taught you better. Put the comments up. Sorry,
Oh.
Chris, I'm going to pay better attention. um, so what's next now that you accomplished, or well, before I go with what's next, I'm going to honor Jay. So Jay's a client, and he has taught me one of the things that one of my favorite clients has taught me is to stop and smell the roses before I go what's next, because
Mm-hmm.
that's me, right? I'm very competitive and very driven, so I'm going to stop and let you smell
Mm-hmm.
the roses. How did it feel afterwards?
Mm, it's hard to like separate the emotions because so one, it was such a struggle just to finish the race physically. It was exhausting. Mentally, it was really
It took you
tough.
about 5.5 hours.
Yeah, it took me a
Was it
really long
about five?
time. Took me a long
Well,
time. So
that's not
that's a long time. Five
considering
and
all
a
the
half hours.
hills. That's not a long time.
Some man just broke his own world record and ran a 2:02 marathon. Is
Wow, that's
yeah.
crazy.
Anyways,
But we're
so
not too competitive in this house.
5.5 hours is a long time to be moving your body nonstop.
Yeah.
So I finish and I instantly I they put them and then you like walk to like the finishers area and there's a lot of people and I turn to Chris and I'm like, I just need you to hide my face for a second. And I just cry. Like there was just so much emotion from finishing the race to everything that happened during the race. I just needed to be like, okay, just let it out. And then I was okay. So that was like immediately following the race. But since I finished, I feel like I still haven't given myself time to really stop and like process that I actually did it. Like I still surprise myself sometimes when I'm like, oh yeah, like people are talking about like I do Peloton classes and they're like, yeah, you're training for the London Marathon coming up or whatever. And I'm like, oh wait, I did a marathon. Like it just sometimes it still hasn't really sunk in, I feel like.
Hmm. So what do you need to do to sink it in? I promised her I wouldn't coach her on this.
I mean, I feel like I don't know. Like I guess like to me it just doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. I think maybe because I didn't do it the way I wanted. Like I the time I wanted to finish. And it wasn't the race that I was expecting and didn't go the way I wanted it to go. So I'm not like happy with the race itself, but I'm proud of myself for doing the race, if that makes sense. I'm hearing Coach Mom.
Mom. Shh, Phil. Shh, shh, shh. Well, I'm not going to coach you up on it. I'm not. I promise. I'm super proud of you. You know, I know you wanted to finish it faster. Considering it's the fourth hardest marathon in the United States, you're running in rain and sloshy shoes. Um, I saw your splits, right? So I have my watch on and I can see all of Anya's and Christopher's splits on my watch. I'm pretty impressed. I was really impressed. You know, I but I'm your mom. I'm supposed to be impressed. But even not being your mom, I'm gonna, like Chris Lynch says, take the win. It's
Yeah.
huge. So I know what you have said to me, but I haven't asked you this in a couple weeks. Will you do another marathon someday?
That's a tough question. I don't want to just say no. Like doing the marathon itself, it's hard, but it's not leading up to it that's so demanding. that I just don't know if I'd want to do all of that again, just knowing like it was hundreds of miles that you have to run over the course of like 4 months before the marathon. Um, so I don't know. I don't want to just rule it out, but it's not in my future, like any near future for sure.
So that's different, right? So when I asked you like the day after, you said, "Oh hell no."
Yeah.
So see, we're softening a little bit.
Yeah.
That was exactly what you said. "Oh hell no, I'm never doing that again." So there. So what are you doing in January?
I'm doing a half in January.
There you go. So Anya, so Christopher, her husband, signed up for a full marathon.
Hmm.
Anya signed up for the half marathon, and yours truly signed up for a 5K.
Yeah.
Yep, that's my
And
goal.
just to show how competitive Crystal is to try to beat me before I finish the half while he's doing the full. I was
I
like,
thought I
no,
was
that's not gonna happen.
So everybody here is going to want to know what's the date of your half marathon? What's the date?
15th.
January 15th. I should know because I'm doing the 5K. I'm just a little bit in denial right now. Um, yeah. So Chris wants to finish before you finish.
But he would have, yeah. But to
Yeah.
do that though, he would have to break the world record if I run the pin. So it's not really possible unless something happens
Oh, don't
and
say that to a man who's super Olympian in his profile.
unless I get another really bad cramp and then I end up running not at the pace I want to run at, then it's very possible for him to do it.
All right, we'll see.
We'll
All right,
see.
so what else is in your everybody who's a guest? I always say, "What's your next chapter? Like, what are you going to write next?" Other than a marathon, anything else you want to share?
Um, I think like just speaking like in a broad, I would say, um, coming off of that like marathon, I've really kind of started paying more attention to just like how I am mentally and physically feeling and being more in tune with those emotions, manage those throughout the day and what I need to do to keep them healthy. So just learning more about myself and figuring out what I need to do in order to kind of stay positive and uplifting and bright and happy for the everyday, you know?
Yeah. And so one of the things, obviously the apple doesn't fall far from the tree on this one. It does fall very far on some, especially things like habits, because you're such a role model when it comes to habits. But that's one of the things we have in common is processing our feelings
Mhm.
and stopping and feeling our feelings. And if you're happy or sad or frustrated, processing those feelings too.
Right.
So I'm not going to ask you how you do it. That's not what this is about, and I'm certainly not going to coach you on it because I know if you want, you have a coach in your back pocket to lean into. That's not mom about that. But I know for myself, my story around processing feelings is I do tend to put them aside because I live here in my brain and I'm very driven, and I'm not so here in my heart. And so
Mhm.
my coach has me sitting down for 5 minutes every single day and accessing what's here. So sometimes I
Mhm.
cry, sometimes I'm very happy. Um, it's a new sensation to sit there with feelings.
Mhm.
And journaling is one way of doing it. I don't tend to journal much, but that is one way. If some of you guys, so if anybody in the comments wants to share how they process feelings, yes. And Carolyn Gray says, "Don't speak cramps into your life." Did you hear that? See that? I'm going to put it
I
up on the
did see
screen.
that.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah. Just speed and ease and relaxation.
Yeah. No, I think what's
But
next is
anybody who's,
figuring out what's next.
yes, cool. And that's very okay, especially at your age.
Yeah.
And if anybody in the chat wants to share how they process feelings, that's great. And if not, that's okay too. Um, and, And you have a new addition to share. And Carolyn says journaling for me. Absolutely. So, new addition to your house.
Oh, I was like, a new addition. What are you talking about? Um, adopted a dog. We rescued a dog Wednesday this past week. She is
Where
a
is
pit
she?
bull. She is probably just right outside my door listening to me.
Bring her in.
I mean, I don't think
She come
no,
in?
that's
Yeah, she can come on your lap. Yeah, yes.
she's too big to come on my lap.
Oh, okay.
Next time, you can post a picture of her after.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
yeah,
So,
she's 1 years old. Yelling into a pillow.
hello. Oh, Chris, you and I need to have a talk about that. But it does work, by the way. Yeah. Well, Malibu's super cute. So, yes, post a picture.
Yeah, so we're just training her and getting her all socialized. Gonna take her on a walk after this so she can just get her energy out. She's just a
Yep.
bundle of energy.
Okay, so the other question you answered this last time, so you can answer it the same way, or you can have a new one. So last question as we close out today, is there a favorite song, book, quote, poem that
Mm.
uplifts you or makes you feel strong? Podcast, it could be anything like that in your life that you listen to.
Yeah, I know last time I shared a mantra. Trying to think if there's something else. Um, honestly, it's more of like stepping into a different version of myself. So whenever I'm working out, I feel like I enter into a different version of me. And that really sets, like, that helps me goes and quotes and positive self-talk and all that stuff that I feel like I don't have during like my normal day. So that's kind of like how I love to start my day. So that way I have those in my back pocket for the rest of the day, if that makes sense. Like it's not like I have a quote. It's more of like a sense of being that I love about myself when I'm working out that I love to channel in the beginning of my day so I can help carry that with me the rest of the day.
That's very cool, Anya. I wish you can channel that to anybody who wants to listen, including me. I'm going to sit here and take that energy really quickly. I have to get in the car now and drive to Escondido.
Mm.
All right, everybody. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for commenting and being here. We really appreciate your company when we do this. I do have another live on Thursday, and that'll be a lot of fun. And anybody who missed last week's, Candace and I have been friends for 14 years, and we've lost touch over the years with kids growing up. And I moved to California, and she moved to Lake Michigan. And it was amazing getting caught up and sharing some of the things we did together when we were actually in the same space. So that was a really fun live last week. And Anya, thank you for the special edition and taking your busy time to share some very personal stuff. So
You're welcome.
I love you.
Love you too. It's always fun to share. I
Yeah.
hope to
Yeah.
inspire others. So,
All right, everybody. Have a great week, and we will chat soon.